Hello and welcome. Now, are you a parent who is thankful to start phasing out homeschooling and have your children slowly returning back to school? And are you also concerned about the transition to the new normal and what effects that it may have on children? Now, if your answer is yes, then you're definitely in the right place. There's no doubt that phasing out of COVID-19 lockdown is a relief for many parents, and children are simply just busting to see their friends again. But realistically, this is not just a normal return back to school from school holidays. We are returning to a new normal. So, what does this time of adjustment mean for children, especially students who have anxiety, learning disorders, or behavioural challenges? Well, to help talk to us about this today, we speak with Kate McMahon. We're really excited to welcome her back. And Kate's going to share her tips, how you can help make your child's transition back to school and into the classroom a positive experience, and to help them support them in being their best. Now, Kate is an educator, a high school teacher, and executive manager at Student Tutors. And at Student Tutors, she actually runs their distant education support program all across Australia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kate. How are you?
Pleasure to be here. Thank you. I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, we're really, really good. And this is exciting to be chatting with you again. And, things have been moving so fast the whole time with COVID-19.
Definitely.
And, I really do empathise with school teachers who have had to adjust to so much so frequently throughout this whole sort of COVID-19 era, and a little bit like being in a washing machine. I think, which way are we going? And, all of a sudden, homeschooling's going to be for the whole of term 2, and then all of a sudden it's not now. So, what are your thoughts on that? I think there's just the constant changes.
I think for anyone working in the education sector at the moment, it really is like that. Week to week, we've got new updates from the government and new updates from the departments, and we just keep having to adapt and change how we're doing things.
Yeah. And I mean, children also have had a lot to take in these last few months,
Definitely.
Understanding what COVID-19 is, how it affects them in their lives, and, what they need to do to keep themselves safe as well. And as students are returning back to school, they will have to follow a strict set of rules once they're back at school. For example, there's a possibility they won't be able to drink from water fountains. Recess and lunch times will be staggered. They may not be able to play on some play equipment. So, generally, do you think any of this sort of activity will cause any mild anxiety with kids or not?
It really depends on the child, and I think schools are being really fantastic in understanding that it is going to affect each child differently, and especially for primary age students, they're putting a lot of time into helping those students understand what's going on and why they can't perhaps play on equipment like they normally do, or why they may not be able to see siblings at recess or lunch with those staggered lunch breaks.
And talking about staggered as well, the return back to school itself physically is going to be staggered, I guess, depending on the ages of the children. There's some schools that are, returning, and I guess in the household also there's going to be some sort of families that are going to have one child returning back to school and another one is sort of going to be home at all. So do you think this may increase some of the stress levels in the home, and especially for the children that they just don't want to return back to school at all?
Yes, I mean, it's really unprecedented, and for a lot of families it is going to continue to be that time of a little bit of unknown and a little bit of heightened anxiety, depending whether all their children are going back to school in one fell swoop, or whether they are having those staggered return dates. And each different situation will bring different challenges, certainly.
And is there anything that you think parents need to be wary of with this particular situation? Are there any do's and don'ts? For example, if one child doesn't want to go back to school, and then maybe you'll sort of hold them back and have their children go back to school at the same time. Do you have any advice with that sort of stuff in the do's and don'ts for parents?
Yeah, I mean, every family is different, certainly, and each child is different. But I think in terms of what's best to do at this stage, you follow your school's advice. It's always best, to follow those guidelines because they have been set by the educators and by the leadership team at the school. So if they believe that a staggered start is going to be best, then it's best to have your child going back with the rest of their year group rather than staying home and trying to go on a different day. It'll help ease their anxiety to be with the rest of their peers, having that same routine.
And we've spoken about, I guess what children have been going through and what parents are feeling as well. But let's not forget also the teachers have been through a lot at the moment also.
Yes.
And so do you think the transition back to school is going to put any additional pressure on them? And I guess with regards to this, is there anything that we should be and parents should be aware of with regards to teachers and what they've got on their plate?
Yeah, definitely. I think teachers have certainly been the ones that have been forgotten a little bit in all of this, in terms of the amount of adjustments that have had to be made behind the scenes. And certainly, as teachers, we're not really looking for thanks or anything like that. But we do ask that parents, if they are concerned, that they reach out, they communicate and let the teachers know so that adjustments can be made, rather than sort of getting a bit head up about it and sort of laying blame in different areas. So the best thing to do if you are concerned, reach out to the school, find out who's best to speak to and share those concerns so that they can be addressed in a timely manner.
Yeah. Good advice. Now, we published your article, A Return to Class. Now, for someone who hasn't read the article yet, can you please give us a little bit of an overview what it's about and just tell us what inspired you to write it?
Well, as a teacher, I'm constantly in contact with both the schools and the students and their parents, as well as tutoring, being in that more one-on-one environment where you're finding out through distance education what they're going through. So I guess I felt I had a bit of an overall well-rounded view of what is on people's minds with this transition back to school. So the main points of the article are certainly, accepting the situation, accepting that it's been a really hard time for everyone, and whether you're a family who may have had to close your business for a time or someone in the family's lost their job and students working from home, this has been something that most people have never dealt with in their lives. So it's about accepting that it has been out of our control, and everyone from students to parents to educators are doing the best that we can in this situation. And sometimes taking time to accept that is a really good thing to help everyone's anxiety at this time. And from there, the article looks at basically ways to ease back into the classroom, good things to help transition students and families into this next phase. And also kind of to see some of the positives that home-based learning has brought and maybe hang on to some of those moving forward.
Wonderful. And we'll have a link through to the article in the show notes and the introduction paragraph. Now, as we said at the start of the chat, kids are going to be busting to see their friends. Of course, it's been, a very long time. They haven't seen them, but they equally would have heard, a lot of messages about social distancing. So what happens, they return to school and they see their buddies and they want to run up and give them a hug or a high five because they haven't seen them for ages. What happens when, we've been so strict with social distancing rules, and what happens if kids just want to hug and jump all over their friends because they're happy to see them again? What happens?
It is a very difficult situation. Schools are definitely doing the best they can to social distance. The health authorities have told us that children are in a very low risk category in Australia, thankfully. So in terms of that, I suppose children and parents don't have to be too overwhelmed in terms of hugging and sitting next to each other at lunch times. However, things like sharing food, and for the high school students, boyfriends and girlfriends and things like that, we want to really make sure that we are keeping social distancing and
nicely said. Very
yes,
diplomatic.
working in a high school, you said, you know, we're keeping those really close sharing of food and things like that to a minimum to keep hygiene as good as we can. And schools are putting into really strict procedures in terms of hand washing, you know, before and after, hand sanitizing between classes, wiping down desks. So it is going to be quite different for students, and I think parents will need to let their children know that that's what they are going to see when they get back to school.
Yeah, it's not just going to be a normal return to school, you know.
Definitely not.
Yeah. And in talking about that, you know, as adults, we know what it's like returning back to work after a lengthy holiday. It's painful, as your concentration and your focus has to readjust. I can't say the word readjust, sorry. So, you know, is this something that we need to be mindful of? And I guess, in your opinion, how can we support our children through this adjustment they're definitely going to be going through in the next few weeks?
Yes, look, I'm sure there will be many tantrums upon returning to school, especially for younger students, but older students too who have been enjoying those sleep-ins. So I think the best thing to do is to really establish that routine, maybe even over this weekend or in the coming days, make sure that students are aware of what's going to be happening. So what time they're expected to get up for school, how they're getting to and from school. So that may be different. A parent may be driving them, they may be carpooling, or they may be on public transport, as well as what's expected of them after school, whether they're coming home to do their homework or whether they're going to be allowed to have a little bit of wind down time first.
Yes.
Students find comfort and children find comfort in routine and knowing what's going to happen next. And that's especially important in students with learning difficulties and challenging behaviours as well. It's even more important.
Well, you know, talking about that structure, I mean, at the moment, you know, and for the last, how long has it been now? I don't, lost in
6
a bit of
weeks.
a bit of a time trap, to be honest
It
with
is.
you. It's
Yeah.
this void. It's really weird. But you know, the last 6 weeks, I guess kids have really had, you know, all this time on their hands and been able to sort of, you know, although that we've told them and told parents to be able to provide structure and all of these wonderful things, they've pretty much for the most part been able to do what they want to do when they want to do it, type of thing. And that's really been nice. So I guess the whole thing is, you know, being back in a more structured, you know, class may be difficult, you know, to sort of to fit back into sort of that sort of that routine again. So do you have any advice to help? And this is with regards to motivation as well. So like, do you have any advice to help boost and keep our kids motivated? And how do we sort of get them motivated again?
I think, as we spoke about last interview, with parents presenting a really positive attitude towards it. So even if you're not looking forward to getting up early to get the kids back to school, make it a positive, you know. Encourage them, tell them those things that they're going to look forward to, seeing their friends, being able to ask teachers questions, do those practical activities like sport and things like that, to make it an encouraging time to try and keep that motivation up a little bit. And I think too, one of the things we spoke about in the article is trying to keep a little bit of a reward system with some of those positives that have been brought about during home-based learning. So if your children have really enjoyed spending some time playing board games or spending time with family, make sure that's worked into the routine. So, you know, remind them that, well, you're going to school, but guess what? When you get home, we can take the dog to the park all together and things like that.
Yeah. And this time at home and distant learning has really suited children who are introverted. So with that, do you have any advice for parents who have introverted children who simply just don't want to go back to school?
Yeah. Again, if there is something that they're really enjoying, so maybe some extra reading time or some extra time, you know, within reason on their games, use that as a little bit of a reward system to ease that transition in. So perhaps set back a little bit of the homework time and help them to have a bit of a reward time of using some of those activities they would enjoy. And as well, reach out to the teachers. We are getting a lot of correspondence from parents, which is actually really valuable. So if we know a student is struggling and is a little bit introverted, teachers will make accommodations. So they might hold back a little bit of the work so that those students have time at recess or lunch to read a book or to play a game on their computer or to sit with their best friend and not be overwhelmed by the enormity of the school situation again.
So overall, I guess, like, what are your major concerns, I guess, with the back to school transition then, in general?
In general, look, I think it's all quite a bit of an unknown at the moment, and that is giving anxiety to everyone, educators, parents, and students.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's taking it one day at a time, 1 week at a time. We are entering into our winter, so we don't know how it's going to affect, whether we will see a surge in flu and in COVID again. And, you know, we've had all this time off, so everyone is adjusting to being back on site at school together. So it really is about just taking it one day at a time and helping get students back on track with their learning, because some really have thrived, especially if they are introverts or independent learners, and others have really, really struggled. So it's about trying to get all the year group back into some semblance of a normal routine, as well as a degree of learning that they're all at.
In a lot of the interviews and the articles that we've published, I think we've published over 100 articles for families during COVID-19, which has been exceptional, I think, which is incredible. And we've just had so many experts like yourself that we've been able to work with, and I'm really grateful for that. And many of them have said the same thing with regards to when speaking to children, ensuring that you are sort of really validating their concerns. And from that perspective, when validating their concerns, in your opinion, how can parents be real with their children and give them, I guess, real life support that's not really sugar coated so much? You know, if children have their own concerns, I guess, about sort of returning to school and about all of the things I've heard and I've been told about sort of this COVID-19 thing that we've just been through.
Yeah, I think, as you said, having a real conversation with them rather than sugarcoating it. I think in the busyness of day-to-day life, it's easier to just say, oh, you'll be fine. And that's not really listening or letting them know that you're understanding. So being able to sit down with your child, listen to what they're saying and acknowledge that you've heard what they're saying and that you understand, and let them know that it's okay to feel that way, that their feelings and emotions are totally fine, especially at the moment where there is so much change happening. And then once you have validated that, to helping them understand what's going to come next. And yes, reassure them, let them know that they will be fine, but help them know some coping strategies as well, whether that's, you know, deep breathing or some time out doing a fun activity that they enjoy, or looking for those positives like seeing their friends or being back in the classroom with help from their teacher.
And do you think also, so they're just going through the do's and don'ts as well? Because, you know, as we were mentioning before, that there are going to be rules about sort of, you know, potentially no drinking with water fountains and all of the other bits and pieces as well, that this is a time that we still need to be able to ensure that they are washing their hands all the time, and as you mentioned before, avoiding sharing foods and drinks, and, you know, and if they do have a sniffle or a cough or you know, anything like that, they do need to sort of sneeze into their elbow or into a tissue, and you know, if they do use a tissue, it's going to be thrown away immediately. All of these things, there is going to be changes, of course. So
definitely.
what do you think about that as well, with, you know, sort of having that level of communication with them as well?
A lot of schools are sending home newsletters this week to let families know what safety measures are being in place at school. So it's really important that parents do read those, find out what your school has in place, and go through that with your children so they know what to expect. A lot of classrooms will have hand sanitizer, and students will have to sanitize their hands before they go into the classroom and between activities. So that's going to be really important to let them know that that will be happening, and to reassure them that it's to keep them safe and to keep their friends safe. So yeah, definitely going through those do's and don'ts will be important for them, and the school will go through those as well.
And I guess they've just been aware of, I guess, the wider rules as well, because I've read that across all states, once schools have reopened, students are expected to be at school unless, you know, they've got a medical certificate and they're unable to return for some reason. If they are, if they're unwell, if they have a compromised immune system,
Yep.
if they've been diagnosed with COVID-19 or live with someone who has been diagnosed with COVID-19, and if
Yep.
they've been, I mean, in this instance, that very few people would have been overseas in the last sort of 14 days. But of course, you know, so are these the types of things that I guess sort of parents will be receiving in a newsletter, do you think?
Yes, certainly. So that all should be communicated from the school. Otherwise, government websites are very good.
Of course, yeah.
In general, though, if your child or anyone in your family is exhibiting any cold or flu symptoms, that definitely needs to be raised with a GP. Find out what's going on, and that needs to be notified to the school straight away as well, because schools are monitoring it, and it's about keeping the whole community safe. So don't be surprised if, you know, you do send your child to school with cold or flu symptoms, that they will be sent to sick bay, and you'll probably receive a phone call to come and collect them and take them to the doctor. And, you know, that's to keep the whole, you know, all the students, all the staff safe. So I think it's about being quite positive about that and quite reassuring to students as well.
Taking me back with sick bay. Oh, goodness me.
Doesn't it?
Now,
every parent loves that phone call.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the article, you mentioned in the article, you document some really great tips for transitioning back. As I said, we'll have the link in the article, the link to the article in the introduction paragraph. But can you just go through a few of what your tips are that you've actually documented for us?
Yeah. So like we talked about before, setting a routine, that's really reassuring for children, but it's also reassuring for the whole family to know that things are going to be different from next week or whenever you are back at school, to know what time you're getting up, what's going to happen, how you're getting to and from school, and what's going to happen when they get home.
Yes.
The other things,
that level of certainty. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Be patient. So know that this is going to take a while to adjust to, just as home-based learning did. So be patient with your children, be patient with the school. Know that it's going to take a few weeks to really get into a routine and adjust to everything. And yeah, keep those positives that have been there from home-based learning. So anything positive, family time, try and work that into the weekly routine. And the other things are, as I said before, reach out for help. So reach out to the school, whether it's the year coordinator or the classroom teacher, and find out what they can do to assist. And the other thing is tutoring. So obviously I work for student tutors, but we have seen a great result in helping students for various reasons transition back into a classroom and have that one-to-one support of someone who has the experience but is outside of the school and can be really one-on-one with the child and help use their personal skills to make this transition.
So in your experience, like, how have you actually seen, do you have any case studies or anything like that you could maybe share with us, how the use of tutors help kids?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually work with quite a few charities who have chronically ill students working with them, and we actually work with children and students who have had time out in hospital, maybe for several months. They may have missed a whole term of school, or maybe there's a family reason why their schooling has been interrupted. And not only do they miss out academically in that instance, but they lose a lot of confidence being out of the classroom socially as well. So it's about being that person outside of the classroom, that tutor who can sit with them, can build a good rapport with them, and can help them catch up both academically and build that confidence of knowing that, it's okay to enter that classroom as best you can to build those friendships back up, and to build that rapport with the teachers again, and get back into a routine of just being in the classroom, which can be really overwhelming for students.
Well, I guess when we think about it, I mean, children are going to be used to doing more work from home. Maybe even homework is going to be and less of a battle maybe for parents to have the kids sort of come home, because I know what it's like to be able to have, a workstation sort of set up at home and all that sort of stuff as well. But if parents haven't used a tutor before, like where should they start then?
So our website is very easy to use, and you'll have the link there, and you can either search for a tutor and find out what tutors are in your area and what their specialties are, or contact one of our inquiries officers who's able to find out exactly what your situation is, what you're looking for, and give you options of what might be best, what tutors might be best, and what experiences they have. A lot of people will just type in also tutoring into Google and find out what's in their area, and that's a great way as well to find out what services are available. At Student Tutors, we've geared a whole page of our website to transitioning back to school and to showing what services we're offering in terms of online support as well as face-to-face support, now that we are able to enter into people's homes to tutor students.
And is there really a difference between online or face-to-face? I guess with the
Personal
results,
preference.
it just depends on the child.
It depends on the child. Some don't like technology, and I think that's become really apparent through this home-based learning. So some have really found Zoom and things like that quite difficult to use. So they may prefer an in-person tutor, and others are fine with online tutoring, and it provides some flexibility of times and days and locations. In terms of results, there's really no difference. It's just based on the personal preference of the family and the child.
I guess the elephant in the room with regards to this is the question, the $1 million question. Do you think students would have regressed during home-based learning period with regards to their education? What are your thoughts?
I think this is a really big concern for parents and students as well, especially those coming up to the Year 12 sort of final exams. The answer is it's hard to tell, and it really is dependent on the student. Studies have been done across a lot of schools and have found that some students have really actually thrived without the distractions that go on at school. Because remember that normally we've got co-curricular activities, we've got assemblies, we've got students yelling out during class, all those things that disrupt people's learnings. So some students have really thrived in being able to focus at home and just have that interaction online for the content. Other students who don't pick up on things as much or don't have those independent learning skills quite as fully developed may find that they have regressed a little bit, and that's why it is important to get them back into the classroom and getting that face-to-face help that they need.
And then going back to talking about parents for a moment too, children are sponges, as we know, and they really do feel everything that's happening around them. So do you have any advice, I guess, for parents about keeping their own anxiety and concerns in check at all? Is there anything else that you think that we should be aware of?
I think it's about self-care at this point, taking, care of everyone in the family. So not only making sure the children are okay and they're accepting the situation, but check in with yourself as well. So make sure that you're taking some time out, even if it is just 15 minutes when everyone has gone to bed, to slow down for a minute, have a warm beverage, check in with yourself and find out how you're feeling about the situation and validate your own concerns that this is a really rapidly changing time and that it is okay to feel anxious as well. And that will help you then, once you've accepted that, to put a more positive face on, I suppose, for children as well.
Yeah, Kate, this has been a really great chat, and we've spoken about a lot. So if I guess you were to summarise, I guess, your key messages out to parents at the moment, what would they be?
I think the first one is to accept that it's a, really unprecedented time, and that it's okay and we're all doing our best. So try to accept that situation that has been out of our control, and now hopefully as we phase out of these COVID lockdowns, we're going to find a little bit more normality.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes. The second point would definitely be try and implement some of those strategies to make that transition back into the classroom as smooth as possible for children and families. So setting those routines, trying to either reach out to your school or to a tutor to help ease that transition back into the classroom. And it may only be for, say a month that you need those services in place, but it may just help ease that anxiety. And thirdly, I think ending on a positive note, try and look for those positives, hopefully, that have come about during home-based learning, whether it's even just a little bit more time together as a family, or a little bit more of a relaxed environment, and try and use those as a reward system and a positive for the whole family moving forward.
Oh, fantastic. So if parents, I know you mentioned earlier on some of the handles and that sort of stuff, where we can find you, but if parents do want to find out more about student tutors and or have any questions for you, whereabouts can they find you?
So studenttutors.com.au, our website is full of all our contact details and a lot of handy hints and tips about how to best engage tutors to help you and your family.
Awesome. Great chat. Thanks, Kate. And
Thank you so
hopefully we'll
much.
speak again soon. Take care.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rachel. Bye.
Bye.